If you've ever owned a Genesis, chances are you at least heard of Vectorman. I vaguely remember the commercials for it. Vaguely meaning hardly anything other than the name and the title character being made of a bunch of orbs. Well, I finally got around to playing the game. I must say, it's a very fun one for a while, but it does have a few quirks. But in a nutshell, it's definitely worth checking out. Vectorman's premise is that the Earth has become a toxic wasteland. Everyone who still lived on it evacuated to other planets and left a bunch of robots, named Orbots due to their design, to clean up everything so that the human race could return at some point in the future. Vectorman is one of those such robots. There is another Orbot named Raster, but somehow it merged with a nuclear missile and morphed into a being known as Warhead. Little pun. This Warhead being was the overlord of all the Orbots, and as such, they were all corrupted. Because Vectorman was away launching toxic shit into the sun, he wasn't affected. How convenient. Because your title character must have a quest or else we wouldn't have a game, Vectorman sets out to defeat Warhead. The first thing to note is that Vectorman's graphics have a very similar style to Donkey Kong Country. All of the characters and enemies have a three-dimensional design. This choice gives Vectorman's graphics a design style that was unheard of for the Genesis. This isn't exactly limited to the characters and enemies though. The environments, more specifically the backgrounds, are beautiful. All of them have fantastic visuals, and the majority of the stages also have parallax backgrounds that are unbelievable to see. Most impressive is the stage with constant lightning flashes. It's possibly some of the best atmospheric visuals I've seen in a game of that time frame. Unfortunately, there are some problems with the graphics too. Although the characters are in 3D, there are some lack of details to them. Most of the enemies are drawn in one or two colors, so many of them come off as drab looking. Vectorman himself suffers from this problem. In addition, a few of the stages look identical to each other. It's really a shame to recycle environments like this, and it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't that 3 or 4 of them are similar. At least you have different backdrops for each of these stages, but you can't avoid seeing it as a recycled layout. The big thing is that the gameplay is very solid for a platformer. The controls are simple enough. Although you can alter what buttons do what, there's only 2 things you'll need to do, other than moving. You jump and you shoot. I used A for shooting and B for jumping, but as I said, this is changeable. You'll be doing a lot of both. Vectorman also has a double jump, which is used logically by pressing jump a second time while in midair. Vectorman can shoot like Mega Man, in which he can have up to 3 projectiles on the screen before having to wait until one of them disappears. Unlike Mega Man, he can shoot diagonally. Also, when you jump, if you shoot downwards, you'll slow your descent slightly. Although this is never really required, it is a trick that's available for you. You can upgrade your weapon a bit too. This is done by shooting the TV monitors that are just hanging around. They'll take about a dozen shots, but often award you with one of many power-ups. This can range from health, range multipliers, and weapons. These weapons are timed, so use them as long as you can. In addition to this, the monitors can get you access to a special morph for Vectorman. These aren't always useful, but can get you to access hidden areas. The basic one is a bomb that destroys everything on the screen. However, you can also obtain a drill that can destroy certain floors and a car that can destroy certain walls. You can also find one that turns Vectorman into a fish, which is only useful in the water-themed stages, as it allows him to swim much faster. You can also find a rocket type that allows Vectorman to fly. Again, these aren't entirely necessary, but they do allow Vectorman access to hidden areas or navigate the terrain a bit easier, especially on the vertical water stage. Instead of individually navigating each platform, you can just pick up a fish morph and swim quickly to the top. Even though these morphs may make the game a bit easier, it's still a very challenging game. More accurately, the bosses pose much of the challenge. It starts with the stage 1 boss. It's a flying plane with 2 dangling spiked balls hanging at each end. Once you figure out the pattern, it's not so bad, but then you're immediately assaulted with stage 2. It changes things completely as Vectorman becomes a train that has to blast a pair of robot hands. That's all you need to do, but you have to make sure you're dodging the shots and the hands themselves. After dying multiple times to this, I decided to bump the difficulty down to the easier one. Call me a pansy if you like, but I like completing games, and I still had a nice challenge. Anyway, the plane boss is a more difficult one, but the others aren't pushovers. The acrobats morph into several types of enemies, and defending yourself properly depends on which form they take. There's also a strange 3-step boss that forms from what looks to be an engineering blueprint board. The Piranha type one is the bitch of the 3, since you can't outrun it when you shot it, so you need to carefully time your attacks. All in all, the game is moderately challenging in the bosses alone. You might think that the game gets boring because of the constant running and gunning, but that's not true. You can gun for the end and be done with it since there is a time limit, but if you want to truly master the game, you can look for all the secret areas. Although I've only found the one, you can destroy a shield generator and then a satellite to access a bonus stage. As I said, I've only found it once, and I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do, so I can't really talk about this too much. But anyway, the stages for the most part are non-linear. Although there is usually a straight route for you to take, there's many optional platforms and rooms that you can explore for extra power-ups and points. This is pretty cool because it turns an average game into something that's much more fun. That's the key word here. The game is fun. Right from when you start until the moment that you defeat Warhead, you'll be enjoying yourself. Sure, some of the stages might repeat, but you never really know what's going to happen. It also helps that each stage is aesthetically appealing, and that some stages, like the train level and the rolling stage, help break up the running and gunning and allows you to do something completely different. I may as well talk about Warhead quick. Sadly, he's one of the easiest bosses to defeat, but the stage itself is different. Vectorman will be traveling upwards in a tornado, shooting debris out of his way. Once you get to the top, Warhead will be waiting for you. You have to attack his head, and each time a piece breaks off, a health power-up will be revealed, although it's really hazardous to actually attempt to get it. If you stay to one side and focus on evading and shooting in between, you'll take him down to see the average ending pretty quickly. Vectorman is a pretty fun game that's completable within about an hour. With all the secret stuff, it can occupy much more time than that. If you like these old school platformers, definitely give this one a shot, especially if you like a challenge. I know I enjoyed it. Final score? 8 out of 10. This is Reaper. Check me out on Facebook at facebook.com/ReapersReviews. Happy fragging.